I hope that everybody has arrived now. Welcome to this open evening, and we're going to be talking about all of the different programs, all of the different courses that you can study within the larger umbrella of archaeology. My name is Gilly Carr, and I'm the Professor of Conflict Archaeology and Holocaust Heritage and the Academic Director in Archaeology here at PACE, and you're all very welcome this evening. Well, also on either side of me, or at least from the view that I have two of our current students with me this evening, and this means that you'll get a chance to hear from them and a chance to ask them questions as well. So we've got Kelly and Bryony who are joining us this evening. So I thought I would really structure this open evening by telling you a little bit about our courses. So let's have a look at the kind of courses that we're going to be talking about this evening. We've got the certificate in archaeology in ancient Britain, certificate in classical studies, certificate in the study of medieval England, certificate in world archaeology, diploma in archaeology, conflict archaeology and heritage, and the diploma in archaeology, death and the ancient world. And I'm sure your very first question is, ooh, certificates and diplomas, what's the difference? Well, I will be going into that in just a little while, but in short, a certificate is the equivalent of first year undergraduate study, and the diploma is the equivalent of second year undergraduate study. So there you are. We have a chance to progress with your studies through the field of archaeology. So let me start off with looking at the archaeology of ancient Britain. And we have some of our certificates alternate with other certificates each year. So that's the case with this one. We have the certificate in the archaeology of ancient Britain, which alternates in the archaeology of the ancient world. And in the archaeology of ancient Britain, which begins this October 2026, the three modules that you'll be doing, one each term. For those of you who haven't studied with us before, just heads up that at Cambridge we have rather traditional names for terms of the year. Instead of winter, spring and summer term, we call them the Michaelmas term, the Lent term and the Easter term, and that just reflects what the university calls its terms. So in Michaelmas, in the autumn term, we do Introduction to Archaeology. So this is an ideal starting point for any of you out there who have never studied archaeology before. In the Lent term, we do Prehistoric Britain, which is the Neolithic, the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. And then in the final term, we do Historic Britain, which is the Roman period, the Anglo-Saxon period, or the Vikings. And just as a heads up, these days we no longer call the Anglo-Saxons, we call them the early medieval period. And this is because the way that the term Anglo-Saxon has been hijacked by white supremacists. And so we tend to avoid that. But I think, given that I imagine many of you on this call have never studied archaeology before, I just want to just use the traditional term Anglo-Saxon, so perhaps it makes a little bit more sense to you. But anyway, on we go. So let's have a look at the certificate in classical studies. In Michaelmas, this includes the study of Greek literature, and the focus is the worlds of the ancient Greek drama. Now, we study the literature in translation, so you won't be expected to be studying ancient Greek and Latin itself. It will all be in translation, but we've got some excellent tutors who will be teaching you all about these texts. So in the Lent term, we do Latin literature and we focus on the Latin epic. And then in the Easter term, we do Athenian democracy in the age of Athens Empire. And for those of you who are thinking, hold on, Gilly, are you teaching? Yes, in the certificate that I just showed you, the previous one, I teach two of those modules. I co-teach in two of those modules. Anyway, so this is the classical studies. So let's move on now to the certificate in the study of medieval England. And this alternates with early medieval England. So once again, early medieval is Anglo-Saxons, and so medieval is after that. So in the Michaelmas term, we look at the landscape archaeology of medieval England. So this has quite a strong archaeology focus, this course. In the Lent term, we look at culture and society in medieval England. And in the final term, the Easter term, we look at art and architecture in medieval England. So really, you're going to get quite an overview of archaeology and history and art and architecture of this period in time. And this course always sells out. So if you are keen on studying this one, I would book early. We have some excellent tutors. In fact, all of our tutors are excellent. Of course, I would say that. But we really do have some excellent tutors on this course. So that is that one. And the as I say, it alternates with early medieval England the following year. Now, World Archaeology is one of our newer courses, and we're rather excited because we've restructured it for this coming academic year. And so in Michaelmas, we're going to be looking at the introduction to themes in world archaeology. And then in the Lent term, we're going to be doing the archaeology of the Indian subcontinent. So that's going to be the first time we've taught this on this course. And we've got a couple of my colleagues in the Department of Archaeology who are teaching this one. And then in the Easter term, we'll be doing themes in African archaeology. And this is taught by one of our long-standing tutors, Dr. Isabel Vela-Gregory, who really is excellent and has been doing field work in Africa for a little while now. And some of you, I imagine, will be looking at the image here, and you're probably thinking, oh, is this African? Yes, it is. This is the site of Great Zimbabwe, as it's called, and is a very interesting site because it was hijacked by some of the early European archaeologists who tried to convince people that it couldn't have been built by the communities who lived around the site, and it had to be built by Phoenicians, but no, it was built by Africans. So as you can imagine, African archaeology has quite a lot of European racism to get through and move beyond, and that will be touched on in this course. Okay, let's have a look at the Diploma in Archaeology, Death and the Ancient World. And this is one of the modules that runs in alternate years. So this will be starting in October. And in the Michaelmas term, we'll be doing Life and Death in the Ancient Mediterranean. Again, this will be taught by Dr. Isabel Vela-Gregory. She's from Malta, and so she's done a lot of work in the Maltese prehistoric period, and that's her jumping point for looking at the Mediterranean area. And that will be followed in the Lent term by osteoarchaeology and paleopathology. So if you've ever wanted to be able to study ancient bones and to recognize what somebody died of from their bones, and to be able to look at a skeleton and to sex it, to say whether it was male or female and how tall the person was and what their you can read a life story onto the skeleton. We all manage to mark our skeletons in various ways, perhaps through breaking limbs or getting diseases such as syphilis or tuberculosis, which show up on skeletons. Of course, not so many these days because anyway, obviously. So on the Easter term, we move on to Unwrapping the Dead. It's funerary archaeology, and that's taught by Dr. Rachel Dan. And we've got a little picture from ancient Egypt here. Okay, let's move on to this course. It runs in alternate years. So we're actually doing this particular course at the moment, the Undergraduate Diploma in Conflict Archaeology and Heritage. And yes, that is me in the hat in the photograph, excavating with a mattock. And let me tell you, mattocks are very heavy, much heavier than they look. And I'm excavating here at a place called Svatava in the Czech Republic, where I'll be returning this year. And it was a subcamp of Flossenburg concentration camp. So I really shouldn't be smiling quite so widely as I am in this picture, but I think I'm grinning at the weight of the mattock and trying to be as strong as possible to lift the thing. Anyway, in the Michaelmas term, we look at conflict archaeology. So that's the archaeology of 20th century conflict, like World War I, World War II. And in Lent term, we look at dark heritage. And dark heritage is sort of one of those terms that I think you can kind of intuitively work out what it is from the title. But just in case you're still a little mystified, when we think of heritage in general, we think of sort of glorious monuments and statues that we can all agree are heritage, like Buckingham Palace and Big Ben and Trafalgar Square and things like that. But dark heritage is the heritage of the darker side of our culture. So, for example, Auschwitz would be an example of dark heritage. So these are sites which still remain in the present, but have a very dark history associated with death or disaster, something like that. And in the Easter term, we move on to heritage studies as a more of a general field, and this is taught by Dr. Britt Bailey, who did her PhD in the Department of Archaeology here in Cambridge, and now actually teaches has a lecturing position in Copenhagen. So, as I say, this diploma focuses for the most part on the archaeology of 20th century conflict in the first and second modules. And it looks at how heritage practitioners and archaeologists work out what survives, what's valued, and what we select to be preserved in the present. And we also consider the challenges of how do you manage dark heritage. So we'll be looking at that and a bit at Holocaust heritage as well. So, gosh, that was a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. So conflict archaeology runs alternately with Death in the Ancient World. So let's have a look at what we've got here. Now, at certificate level, these are introductory courses, so you don't need to have prior study in archaeology before taking these. They're the equivalent of a first year of an undergraduate degree. And so because you're studying part-time, 2 certificates would be equivalent to 1 year of full-time study. So if you were minded to do the entire equivalent of a part-time degree, noting that neither Oxford nor Cambridge offer part-time degrees as part-time degrees, but we offer the a sort of alternative. It's so you do 2 certificates, 2 diplomas and 2 advanced diplomas, and that's the equivalent of a degree, and that would enable you to get onto a master's degree. So yeah, so a single certificate that lasts 1 year part-time is 60 credits. I say 1 year, really it's 9 months because you study from October to June. It's all done online. There's no physical meeting, so it's very convenient no matter where in the world you're based. And we have students who join us from Australia, from Canada, from America, from across the world, from all over Europe. We've got students from every continent really, and they don't all necessarily come to the live classes, but the live classes and the pre-recorded classes are all recorded. Everything's recorded. So whatever time zone you're in, you can still watch and keep up with classes and still contribute to the weekly forums and things like that. So let's have a little look at the diploma now. So the diploma is more in depth than the certificate, and it's we ask for some prior study in archaeology before doing the diploma, because as you can imagine, if you were to jump into the second year of study of any discipline at all, you'd be a little bit at sea if you hadn't studied it before. So it's taught at second year level. There are 60 credits each year. Again, it's over 9 months. It's taught part-time. It's all online. And the entry requirements, well, if you're applying to do a diploma in archaeology, your application comes to me and I make that judgment call about whether you have sufficient prior study. Now, a lot of our students will do a certificate before moving on to a diploma. And I think it's important to say that students can bounce up and down. They can do certificate, diploma if they want, or you can do 2 certificates, 2 diplomas, or just sort of pick and choose. But once you've gone up to diploma level, it doesn't mean you can't fill in your studies with doing another certificate. It just depends what your goal is. And so whenever a student wants to do their studies with us, I often have a conversation and say, are you studying purely for enjoyment because we've got a course on Egyptology and you always wanted to do a little Egyptology? Or are you wanting to do the equivalent of a degree and take your studies all the way, maybe even go on to a master's, maybe even a PhD, whatever your dream is, I can help advise what your best pathway would be to achieve that. So, as I say, certificate is first year level, diploma is second year level. And I always say if you have no prior experience in archaeology, start with a certificate. And often I get queries from people who say something like, well, I've got a master's degree in chemistry. Can I start in the second year? And I think if you've got a qualification in another subject, it's not really going to set you up for archaeology, even if you have a PhD in maths or something is not going to help you. Now, I think I would also say the same for history to a certain extent, because the study of history is different to the study of archaeology. And I think that it all depends what field of history your prior study might have been in and what aspect of archaeology you wish to study. Obviously, if you're doing the medieval period, and you've got prior study in medieval history, then you'd be able to sort of go into diploma level, but it all depends. So this is why I'm available for emails so I can answer your particular questions. And in just a little while, we will be looking at some of your questions in the chat. Do feel free to type your questions. We also have some previous questions that we've been collecting over the last couple of weeks, and I'll be looking at those. So, yes, so just having a look at my PowerPoint, can I get onto a master's course with these qualifications is one of the questions, to which the answer is yes. So we also have a third year level of study, which is the advanced diploma. And the advanced diploma is streamed into different fields. So archaeology fits into the human past stream. And the first year of the advanced diploma is in the methods and theory of research. And so you can take your, let's say you wanted to do so the advanced diploma, as I say, is 2 years. The second year, the second advanced diploma is to do one long research dissertation, which is really exciting. But the first year, you get to try out ideas in different formats. So let's say you wanted to do a dissertation on Ramses II or something like that, and you're really into ancient Egypt, then what I'd do is guide you in your first year of the advanced diploma to do smaller projects on different aspects of ancient Egypt, which are pertinent to your particular interest. So you would build up a really strong foundation so that when you come to write a dissertation in your second year, you'll be really well prepared for that. So, in terms of the question, what comes next? Well, that is up to you. So we can cover you for all 6 undergraduate years at part-time, that is. Obviously, if you were full-time, you'd do it in 3 years, but we can cover you for all 6 years to do the equivalent of a degree, and that would enable you to then progress onto a master's degree elsewhere. Right, well, what kind of assignments do we do? And I know that many students who come and study with us sometimes feel a little apprehensive because they haven't written essays since their school days, and they are a little unsure about how to go about these things and whether anything's changed since they were at school. And I'm happy to say that our tutors always provide guidance, not only for every single assignment, but also there are specific parts of our VLE, virtual learning environment. Think of it like a sort of dedicated website for every course. So on that page, we have study skills like how to write an essay, how to do a bibliography, and there are also opportunities in class to go through these things as well with the tutor. And so each assignment is typically 1,500 to 2,000 words. And if you're unsure what that length is, 500 words is about 1 page of A4 typed. So so think of it as sort of 3 to 4 pages. But we don't just do essays, of course. Within the archaeology umbrella, we do reports as well. We do museum exhibition reviews, artifact reviews, heritage site reviews, skeletal reports, cemetery reports, heritage reports. And there are some very inventive assignment types for some of our different courses. So yes, I'm sure that we'll be hearing a little bit more about that later, but there is a lot of guidance on how to do this sort of thing. So how does the teaching work? I know I've mentioned that everything is online, and we have a method of teaching which isn't unique to Cambridge at all. It's called the flipped classroom approach. And what that means is that each week there are 2 hours of instruction, and the first hour is a pre-recorded lecture giving you the knowledge and information. And then in the live class, which is also recorded, in the live class, it's more of a seminar style. So we will be discussing We'll be discussing some of the issues brought up by the lecture. It's a chance to ask questions. There'll be exercises. They'll be going into small groups, working on particular exercises that week, and there'll be a lot of discussion, debate as well. And the aim of this is to really get you to feel confident in expressing your ideas and verbalizing your ideas so that you can be more confident in writing them down. Because I think sometimes the success in writing assignments is about being confident in what you're saying and being able to articulate it in a way that can come across clearly. So we do encourage those skills, and we give you lots of opportunities to practice them as well. So there are, with this flipped classroom approach, 2 hours a week. The courses are typically 10 weeks long. And the classes are held typically from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening UK time, which is about lunchtime in America. And it's sometime in the middle of the night, I'm sure, for Australia, but everything's recorded. Some people do join us in the middle of the night their time. I did have one person who joined from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. their time. I'm not sure I would be that dedicated, I have to say. I'm very fast asleep at that time of night. But of course, you're very welcome no matter what your time zone is. Everything's recorded, everything is put online, and typically each week there will be an exercise or a forum just to get you practicing ideas in writing. So, for example, in the conflict archaeology course, to give you an example of the sort of weekly assignment, and I won't call it an assignment, it's just sort of something fun, really. So in the week I was talking about prisoners of war and the objects made by prisoners of war, the exercise was to send people off to try and find online other images of things made by prisoners of war and to post them and to say something about them. So it's just a way of kind of getting you used to doing this sort of thing, really. Yeah, so I think that covers that. Let's have a look at the next slide. So, who's the target audience? Well, really everyone. I mean, aren't we all interested in archaeology? Isn't everyone interested in the past? I'm sure it's not just me. It really is one of those subjects. I remember my first week at university as an undergraduate, I was told that archaeology is one of those subjects that bites you and you get bitten and that's it. You can never do anything else with your life again. And I was a little skeptical, but of course by the end of the week I was completely won over. And here I am many years later. Archaeology really is one of those fascinating things. And I don't know whether you have been watching the Big Dig or there are so many different archaeology programs on telly. Digging for Britain. I mean, I devour them all. Anyway, so yes, anyone who has an interest in human past will love our courses. And I'll say right now that archaeology does not begin with dinosaurs. Dinosaurs and humans did not coexist, and so we won't be going back that far. So of the courses that I've highlighted for you, you'll see that ancient Greece, ancient Rome, ancient Egypt, and indeed the Neolithic in Britain are sort of as far back as we go. But of course, in the courses on Africa and India, will those also start in the deep past as well? Anyway, there'll be things that you will love, I promise. So what are the benefits of doing this course? Well, apart from getting a love for life of all things connected with the ancient past, I think it'll teach you to have a more inquiring mind because you'll start to see the world around you in a very different way. You will build up the skills of critical analysis. So the way you'll be taught to understand and to analyze and to ask questions of artifacts and the past and again the world around you. You'll learn the skills of essay writing and report writing and things like that. And of course, you'll meet like-minded people because let's face it, we're all here because we love the past. And so it's really great when you find your tribe that you can hang out with each week and to talk about the course. So that's a really great part of it. But don't take my word for it. I'm going to introduce you to Kelly and Bryony, who are here this evening to say a little bit about their experience. So who would like to go first?
Again, that's all right. Yeah.
Go for it, Kelly.
Hi, my name is Kelly Aldcock, and I'm currently doing the second undergraduate certificate. In Last year, I did archaeology, world archaeology, and I can speak to that because I believe it's on offer next year. And right now, I'm in the midst of archaeology of the ancient world, which, for those of you that are looking 2 years ahead, I am happy to answer any questions on. And Without going into detail, because I don't know what your specific questions are, it's been a lovely experience so far, and I've enjoyed it throughout. I come from a significantly different background. I do IT consulting, so I think going in, I was a little bit concerned as to whether or not I had the right skill set to do well in the courses, but the level of support has been absolutely wonderful. And just emphasizing something that Gilly said, the sense of community with people that have that common interest has been really lovely throughout and has opened for me a couple of opportunities to participate in activities outside of the PACE curriculum. So we do meet up outside of the course, and we do continue to share resources about activities and opportunities throughout the world, regardless of where you're located, to further your practical knowledge if that's something that's interesting to you. Um, I think that's probably enough. I'll leave it to the participants to see what they have specifically to ask us.
Thanks, Kelly. There, you
No
never
worries.
know, there may be some questions coming up for you soon.
Yeah,
Thanks,
yeah, you got it.
Bryony. Thanks, Kelly. Bryony, would you like to unmute and tell us about your experience?
Great, yes. I completed the undergraduate certificate in classical studies last year. I worked my way up through a number of the short courses that are available through PACE. So I think I was bought as a Christmas present a short course on Julius Caesar. I ended up doing about 5 Roman history courses back to back, and also Greek mythology, and I thought this is fantastic. I thought, where can I go next? Signed up to the undergraduate certificate, and it was a wonderful experience, really. So. I think, by the way, a few of us have taken that same route. So a few people I've studied with on those courses are now doing it this year. It was a really interesting year because you get a very nice overview both of some of the most important periods in Greek and Roman history. So effectively, it's the 5th century blossoming of Athens and the intellectual revolution there, and also the Roman civil wars. But it's also balanced between history and literature. So there were people on the course who were maybe a bit more interested in history or literature, or finding out which of the two they were more interested in. So you get a fantastic overview of what's important really in classical studies, a really nice introduction to the subject. Having said that, it's also quite possible to tailor it to your interests. So one of the things I really liked about the tutors and their approaches to the different essays that we did and the different assignments was that if there's something you're particularly interested in, that can generally be catered for. So in the classical studies course, each of the first assignments, well, the first assignment in each term is a close reading of an ancient text. And if there is an ancient text that's related to that term that you are particularly interested in, then you can ask. And generally, it seems to me you will be able to do that. So that was fantastic because obviously you can, if you're going in with something that you are particularly interested in, you can be supported in following that up. If not, however, there's lots of help in terms of things to look at and so forth. And I think, as Kelly said, I found the tutors and the staff in general very, very supportive. So I don't think I have too much more to say about this other than I got into it by doing more and more courses, and I'm planning to do more and more courses. And yes, very happy to take any questions about classical studies.
Thanks, Bryony. Thanks. And I mean it's I think it might be pertinent to flag up that although some students stay with us for one course, some students might only start with that in mind and then do all courses with us. And I've certainly had students who have gone through all levels of study with us and then gone on to do a PhD elsewhere in archaeology because they got bitten by the bug. or indeed to apply to then do a full-time undergraduate course in archaeology here in Cambridge. So it really depends what your dreams are and whether you get bitten by the bug too. So yeah, there's archaeology is great, but let's get on with my with the slides that I've got. So there are benefits to enrolling early. And that's this for new for this year. There's an early enrollment offer with access to university study resources and study skills support and peer engagement opportunities. And it's a community that lasts, as you've heard from our students. So next steps. If you want to contact us, which I hope you do, there are general questions about applications, more administrative matters, which can be covered by the first email address, inquiries at, I think that might be an old email address, not inquiries at ice.cam.ac.uk. That should be inquiries at pace.cam.ac.uk, because of course ICE was our old name, Institute of Continuing Education. We're now Institute of Professional and Continuing Education. So that I think must be a typo. But anyway, if you have any questions which are specific to the courses or your particular vision or dream for studying, you can contact me directly. And my email address is up there, gcc20@cam.ac.uk. And of course, you can enroll directly from the website. You don't have to enroll via one of these email addresses. It's a click of a button away. So when you click to enroll, you set up an account with us, and then you go through and do your enrollment. So, there we go. So there's the amended email address there, inquiries at pace.cam.ac.uk. And of course, it's important to say that the deadline for applications this year is the 2nd of September 2026. But some of the courses that I've flagged up today do get full very quickly because they are very popular with students. So I don't recommend leaving it to the last minute, bit of a gamble, but you're always welcome to certainly book with us when it's good for you. Now, I do have some questions, which I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Oh, I think someone's done that remotely for me. So I'm going to go through some frequently asked questions, and it's going to be a matter of just finding those questions. There they are on my computer. Now, let's just catch up with any comments in the chat as well. So let's have a look. Let's start with those. So Robin says, I'm a UK citizen but have lived in Canada for 20 years. Are there any grants available for someone like me who has an undergraduate degree from a UK university and struggle to afford a certificate or diploma course? There are bursaries for the classical studies course. I would email that inquiries at pace.cam.ac.uk email address for more information. And I think there's more information about the early bird booking as well. So have a look at that. And also, Robin, you asked, due to the time differences between Vancouver, oh, lovely city, and Cambridge, would I be able to study totally online and watch the lectures at a time of my choice? Yes, the answer is yes, Robin. Absolutely. So we've got Alvin who asks, will the course on medieval England also be covering post-Norman conquest England or solely pre-Norman conquest England? I think it's post-Norman conquest as well, but the answer to your question, Alvin, will be on the web page for that course. So do keep your eye on the website and check out the detail there, because if you expand, there are parts of that page where you click on the little plus sign and it expands more information, and you scroll down and we've got a paragraph of information for every single module. So you'll be able to get more information to see if it floats your boat and it's your kind of thing. So I do recommend you do that, Alvin. Right, the next question is, iPad 2 says that they have previously completed an undergraduate certificate and they're interested in the diplomas in conflict archaeology and heritage and in death and the ancient world. So death and the ancient world starts in October and the conflict archaeology diploma is ongoing at the moment. The latter has information online, but the conflict archaeology diploma comes up with a dead no access link. So I'm just going to flag up to the website team to do something about that. But it probably comes up with that link because the course is being taught at the moment. So you can't sign up for it because it would start again in 2027. So the 2026 intake would be for Death in the Ancient World, and that information should be available online now. And if not, it will be soon, so keep an eye on the website. Alexis asks, could you let us know how we can access references for reading and supporting our studies? Will everything... right, so I presume, Alexis, you're asking about the reading lists. So when you sign up for a course, at that point, then you're sent the syllabus with all of the reading. That's not available online until that point. Will everything you need be available online? Yes, it will. We have an online reading list called Leganto, and basically everything we recommend you read is already waiting for you on the VLE, the virtual learning environment, that dedicated web page for every course. So you only need to click on the book or the article you're interested in, and lo and behold, it will be there waiting for you. So you don't have to buy extra books. Alexis asks, I understand that there are online courses. I think perhaps you mean the short courses, the short online courses, but are you able to help students gain practical experience volunteering on digs? Well, Alexis, no, because our students are global. And before the pandemic, when we used to all be in person, and we did have courses which involved going on digs, but they obviously now we're all online and students come from all over the world. We can't really put on local digs because a lot of the students wouldn't be able to attend. So what I recommend you do is to take out a subscription to a magazine called British Archaeology, and that advertises digs. And you could also Google and have a look at what excavations are available. That might be the best thing to do there. Lisa says, are there any courses that look at the archaeology of other humans, so human evolution? From time to time, the Diploma in Death and the Ancient World does have a human evolution module. This coming year it doesn't, but we have done in the past. And I'm glad you've asked that, Lisa, because that makes me think that I need to get one of my colleagues to come and teach a short online course in human evolution, because I think that would be very interesting. So watch this space. Good thought, good reminder. Anonymous attendee asks, are the numbers of places capped? And if so, how many? Well, yes, I'd say sort of yes and no. Now, on the whole, our courses, the maximum number tends to be around 30. And that's because you can imagine that, one of the things we pride ourselves on is very individualized contact with the tutor and to really give everyone a chance to speak and to debate ideas. And if you're joining a course where there are thousands of faces on the screen, that's not possible. And so we really do have small groups. So I would say that we have this sort of notional cap of around 30. Some courses will sort of go up to 35, but sometimes when that happens, we break into two cohorts and we teach in two consecutive evenings, for sort of group A and group B, if they get too big. And that's just because we really value the experience for students and we don't want to make that a sort of less than satisfactory thing if you don't get a chance to talk. So yeah, so the answer is kind of yes and no to that one. Jen says, how have you found juggling work and study? I think that's a question for Kelly and Bryony. I work full time and I'm not sure I'll be able to give this course the full-time commitment it needs. Well, what do you, Kelly or Bryony, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, happy to. So I also work full time. I'm a lawyer in my day job. I think it really does depend, obviously, on how many hours a week you're actually doing, but I do a full-time job and then some. It has been possible, and there is also time to spare, as well as doing this course. And I don't know if I should admit this, but I have fitted in some other short courses at the same time. Obviously, it does require a commitment, particularly I think when the assignments are due. So I think the first certainly the first term, I realised those couple of weekends before the assignment deadline, I'm probably not going to be doing too much other than writing up my assignments. But I have to say it's been, for me anyway, very manageable. So yes, I think you easily you can work full time and do these courses and still have a bit of a life outside as well.
Thanks, Bryony. Kelly, what's your experience been there?
Yeah, very much the same as Bryony's answer. I think there are times when it requires you to be quite mindful of time management. And personally, this is something that I've always struggled with. But the beauty of the structure of the courses is that you do have the opportunity to manage your own timelines. My experience with both of my certificates is that you receive your assignments quite early on. So if you want to work ahead, if you want to structure, your time around your schedule, it becomes much easier. And yeah, similarly, the level of support that's on offer also helps you to do that. So yeah, it is manageable, unless of course you're working, in a career that has a very high demand. If you have a job that requires those 60 hours a week, you might want to think about it. But if you have a normal full-time job, I think it is quite manageable.
Thank you. Thanks, both of you. Well, there you are, Jen. I hope that answered your question. Right, so let's have a look. So anonymous attendee says, I'm currently doing an undergrad in Irish studies with a minor in classical archaeology in Canada. It's an interesting combo. I'm in my first year, but for next year, if I apply, would it be equivalent to second year studies for a diploma instead of a certificate? Um, See if I can follow what you're saying here. So I see what I think I understand what you're saying. So you're wondering whether if doing an your current full-time studies in classical archaeology and Irish studies, whether that would be a sufficient springboard for you to join our diploma. Well, that would be because you've got classical archaeology. I think it would depend on which diploma you're looking at. And that would probably be an example of where you email me and talk about what you've covered in your course, and we can work it out between us. So let's put it like that, because it might prepare you for some courses but not other courses. So I think it depends what you've got your eye on. Joanna says, also, when will I get notified of being accepted onto a specific course? Well, certificates are open access, and that means as soon as you apply, you should find out within a day or two whether you've got a place. Diplomas have to come through me first. And so I always try and turn around applications really quickly. Now, obviously, as a research active archaeologist, sometimes I'm on field work, sometimes I'm digging, but most of the time I'm in Cambridge working. So if your email comes in, I'll try and turn around your application within usually the same day, sometimes within 48 hours. It all depends. But you would then that would be fed back to you. So pretty quickly is the answer. Steve says, who are the tutors for the certificate in the study of medieval England? The tutors are Dr. Caitlin Green and Miriam Gill and Ellie Pridgeon. So those are the three tutors, and Caitlin Green teaches two of those modules. So iPad 2 says, would we be allowed physical access to the university libraries? I can't remember the answer to that one. I think yes, but all of the books that you need will be available online on Leganto, so you shouldn't need to physically go, although, of course, not everything is available online. Not everything has been digitized, the back catalogue, if you like. So I can see the enrolment team is typing an answer. Anonymous attendee says, if I wanted to complete the rest of my diploma at Cambridge, would that be allowed? Does that mean that you're studying elsewhere and you want to transfer? I'm not quite clear. Or do you mean you've done one diploma at another institution and you want to do the second diploma with us? I'm not quite clear what you're asking, so do type again to provide a little clarity for me. Lisa asks, I'm 73 years old and studied to master's level. Um, that was years ago, of course. Would I be out of place in a certificate course? Not at all, Lisa. We have for every single year, there's a really broad spectrum of ages. It used to be at Pace that the majority of our students were retired, but that's less the case now. It's much more of a mixed age group. Sometimes there are students who this is their, they didn't go to university, or they didn't want to pay university fees at the £9,000 a year, and so want to study part-time with us as a less expensive route. We just get all sorts. We've had students in their late 80s before, and students in their early 20s. And it's really broad. Every single course is very mixed. It's mixed in terms of gender, it's mixed in terms of age, and it's mixed in terms of where people are coming from in different parts of the world. And actually, that's one of the beauties of these courses, because you just get so many perspectives from different cultures and different ideas. And in my experience, and I've been working for this institute for 23 years, the more diversity there is, the richer the course experience is for everyone, because you're just getting ideas coming at you that you had never considered before, because you're mixing with people who are outside your bubble and outside your community, your country, and that's just one of the brilliant things about it. And I'm not just saying that. That really is one of the best things about studying with us. Anonymous attendee, would we have online access to the Cambridge Library? Yes, indeed you do. Jeff says, regarding accessing resources, once enrolled, can the full Cambridge online resources be accessed rather than just the course materials? I'm not entirely sure what you mean, Jeff. Do you mean if you've paid for a certificate in classical studies, can you access other courses? The answer is no. Obviously, if you sign up for one course, you get the information on one course. So what do you mean by the full Cambridge online resources? Do you mean everything the University of Cambridge puts out online? Do you mean, would you be able to access online texts in other fields? So if you have access to the university library online, so you'd be able to check out their maths, their history department, their chemistry, so that's available. So I just need you to provide a little bit more clarity of precisely what you're asking there, Jeff. Maggie says, yes, I'm elsewhere, but I'd want to start the certificate here and potentially, oh, I see. So you're doing a certificate elsewhere, and then you'd want to come to transfer your studies and do a diploma in Cambridge. Yes, of course. I mean, everyone's at liberty to do, a certificate in diploma and certificate in Edinburgh and a diploma in Leicester, and then come to us to do another diploma or whatever. I mean, what's harder is transferring in the middle of a course. That's generally not a thing, because you sign up for a year. And so, and you can't join a course once it's begun. So yes, you can move institutions. Absolutely, that's allowed. That is not a problem. So let's have, okay, so I've got some other questions here that were submitted earlier in the week. So let's have a look at them. Someone says, question one is, I've already been to university and therefore I'm not eligible for a student loan. Is it true that you have a pay-as-you-go type of funding scheme in place? And my colleague has provided an answer to that, because I wasn't quite sure that if you look on our fees and funding page, it does outline the various bursaries and concessions that the students are eligible for. So I'd have a look at that online information. The next question is, can multiple undergraduate certificates in archaeology and classical studies be combined towards a larger award? And the answer to that is the certificate in archaeology can't be combined with a certificate in classics to create a combined award, because they are two different subdisciplines, if you like, but you can combine two certificates in archaeology to get a combined award. So it's about putting together apples and pears rather than apples and pears, even though they're all fruit, they're all kind of under the archaeology umbrella. The next question is, could I do some readings in Anglo-Saxon as I'm studying that language? Well, if you do the certificate in early medieval England, it might be that you say to the tutor, can I read this in the original language, please? And everyone else will be like, ooh, we're really impressed. And I'm sure you could if that's what you wanted to do. But Anglo-Saxon is not taught as a written language. You study sort of the modern version, but it's not an Anglo-Saxon literature course. It's mostly archaeology, history, art, and architecture, as I mentioned. But there will be ways to explore and to bring into your coursework sources that perhaps you can go right to the original language rather than looking at translations. So you might have some advantages there. How can a course be a springboard to a classics degree? Well, if you are a non-traditional student, which is the sort of technical term for if you want to go and do a degree with perhaps without having done A levels or the traditional entry route, which someone might take, you can certainly use our certificates and diplomas as evidence of prior study. And we have had students indeed who have done a certificate in classics and have used that to, when applying perhaps as a mature student to full-time university. And that, you know, and you can show the grades you get. The grades are marked as percentages, which is very helpful, super helpful for admissions tutors at other universities who want to see what, you know, how good you are at your studies. So yes, absolutely, it can be used as a springboard. How long are the contact hours is the next question. So the contact hours is 2 hours a week, 1 hour pre-recorded and 1 hour live. And then about 3 times a term, we have Saturday socials or Saturday study sessions. And these are entirely optional. They're 1 hour, and you might be that you turn up and talk about the assignment, the next assignment, or it might be you want to have a masterclass in how to write an essay or something. So the tutor's kind of available to do whatever it is that students want to do in those sessions. Are references required when applying? No, they're not. No, don't need references. Next question is, how often are the online Zoom lectures held? So once a week. Are there any fixed days yet? Yep, it's all in the syllabuses, which either should be online or are coming online very soon. What coursework is expected? Well, we covered that already. Essays, reports, reviews, that sort of thing. Does the diploma course follow the same format of pre-recorded lectures and live sessions and occasional Saturday tutor drop-ins? Yes, they do. The next question is, can international students from Chile apply for this course? Yeah, you can apply from anywhere in the world. And the application process is simply to go on the website and to start your booking. So it's quite easy. So let's go back to some of the online questions. Nick asks, can I get more detailed information about the course breakdown? Yes, indeed you can, Nick. Just go to the website and have a look at the course page dedicated to that course. And a lot of the information about the breakdown of the course is at the bottom. So you've got to scroll down a little bit to get to the juicy meat of what you're after. But yes, it is all provided for you online. So the second part of your question is you want to make sure that the content is at a level that will match your current level of applied experience through volunteering on various excavations. And I would say there's a difference between practical digging and the more academic pursuit of writing essays and things. And although a lot of experience in excavation will certainly set you up for understanding a historic period or prehistoric period, it's not necessarily going to give you the background in being able to write assignments. So there's the two things to be balanced there. But again, drop me an email and we'll discuss your particular situation. Lucy says, roughly how many hours is the certificate per week? I know the credits are equivalent to 15 hours, but is that realistic? No, I mean, Lucy, to be absolutely honest, think of it as 2 hours a week, 1 hour pre-recorded, 1 hour live. Now, the assignments are due twice a term. Some people like to read articles and book chapters with their Weetabix in the morning or in the evening after watching EastEnders, if you're joining us from the UK, or whatever your favorite soap opera is. Mine's EastEnders. Um, but some people will simply save all of their private study, if you like, until the assignments are due, and then they'll have a major blitz. I mean, it's the same with the full-time undergraduates as well. And it depends whether you're one of these people who just has a major blitz when the assignments are due, or whether you want to eat away a little bit each week. It just depends on your personality type. But I wouldn't think of it as 15 hours a week, because it doesn't really work out in that way. So yeah, think of it as 2 hours a week, and then kind of the length of time it takes to begin to read the articles and the book chapters and to write. It's so many years since I've written an essay. I can't tell you how long it takes to write an essay, but I think it differs for everyone, because it depends how much reading you do and how fast you are at typing, and whether you're one of these people who can think straight onto the computer, or whether you need to write it with a pencil first. Or, everyone works differently. Jeff says, Jeff, I think this is following on from your previous question. So, for example, for the certificate in ancient Britain, might it be possible to access online archived papers and reports in the OASIS database? I'm not familiar with the OASIS database, so that's all very helpful. So do you mean basically if you are you talking about what's called in the field as the grey matter, the archaeological reports? If they're not digitized, then you can't get to them. But if they're in the university library, which is the library that we have our online reading list linked to, if it's at the university library, you should be able to get it. And if it's been digitized, if it hasn't been digitized, you can put in a request for it to be digitized just for you. So I hope that answers that question. Let's go back to the questions that we've been getting during the week. I'm interested in all 3 archaeology certificates, and I'm not sure which one to choose. Well, I can't help you there. You're just going to have to, I don't know what your particular interests are. So I think you're just going to have to go through the website for each one and to read about what's going to be in each module, and to see which one floats your boat the best, which one you think suits you and appeals to you. So yeah, you might want to if you've done some online courses before, which you say you have, the short courses, I recommend you start with the Introduction to Archaeology module in the autumn, which is part of the certificate in the Archaeology of Ancient Britain. That sounds like it's going to be just right for you. Next question is, I am wondering whether these certificates can act as a bridging qualification to graduate studies in archaeology for those with partially unrelated undergraduate degrees, such as geography. I would say if you want to do a master's degree in archaeology, although geography is it's not a million miles away, there's going to be a little crossover, especially if you've done human geography. But I think that if you are wanting to do a master's degree in archaeology and you've only got a little bit of archaeology study, you are going to be at a disadvantage compared to all of the other students. So I recommend that you go through the various steps, the various stages in archaeology. But you can send me an email and we can talk about your particular circumstance. I can see we've only got 1 minute left. Let's see if I can squeeze in one more question. So let me pick one that we haven't already covered. Will there be testing before the classes begin? No, we're not going to be that mean. So yeah, oh gosh, there are some more general questions, but you know what? I think that we can best do these by email. So if we haven't covered your questions yet, then do send an email to either inquiries@pace.cam.ac.uk. But if your question is for me, for the courses specifically, and to discuss your particular pathway, then you can email me at gcc20@cam.ac.uk. But do look at our website, because either now or very soon There is a lot of information about every single one of the certificates and diplomas we've talked about. So it's just a matter of scrolling down through each page and sort of opening up those bits where you have to click on something first to read a little bit more. So I would recommend you do that first to check that your answer isn't already waiting for you online. And then if you're still unclear, then drop us a line and we look forward to hearing from you. So I hope that has answered all of your questions for the time being about our courses. And I would like to thank Kelly and Bryony for coming along this evening and to give us the student voice. Thank you very much to both of you. And thank you to my colleagues who have been manning the chat and have set this up. And I look forward to seeing those of you who are watching online very soon. Bye now.